Greetings, Willow here. Tonight I am going to answer a couple of your questions. The first one is multiple parts, and it is basically my story. They want to know my story and how I discovered that I had spiritual gifts and how I developed them over time. And the second question was, tell us the most surreal experience you've had on your spiritual journey. Well, the only way I can describe both of those, explain both, answer both, is to combine the two questions together, because it's been through a lot of those experiences, those surreal experiences, that have helped me grow and develop my gifts. So I want to take you back to how I became who I am, how I started out as a medium. Now, it's kind of not completely clear to me in the beginning, because I was so young. When I was between the ages of 2 and 3, from what my mother told me, who now my mother has passed, so I can't ask her any more information, but she told me that I had a very bad reaction to penicillin. I went into anaphylactic shock, and they had to basically bring me back from death. So I had a near-death experience. Now, that was between the ages of 2 and 3. My mother told me that when they got me home from the hospital after I was better, that I was different. She noticed that I would be talking to someone in my room, though there was nobody in my room, and I'd be just jabbering away as babies do to whoever was in my room. So that was the first thing that she noticed about me, and I had not done that prior to that experience of the anaphylactic shock. So she didn't think a whole lot of it. So soon after I was better, my grandmother died. Now, that was my mom's mom. She and my mom were very close. I was close to grandma because she babysat me a lot. And so it was a little difficult. My mom wanted me to be at the funeral, but didn't want me to see my grandmother in the casket. So she didn't bring me to the funeral home. She only brought me to the church after the casket was closed. So what I was told was, as they were carrying the casket out of the church to take her to the cemetery, I started to reach for my mom's arms and reached towards the back of the casket and kept going, "Grandma, Grandma," which freaked out everybody in the whole church. A lot of mouths, jaws dropped open, and someone said, "She got Grandma's gifts." And then my mom explained that my grandmother was known as the Seer of the family. Grandma was born in Ireland, and so I think she brought some of her Celtic roots here with her. And she was the one that could see spirits, and she was the one that would know things before they would happen. So they called her the Seer of the family. So that was the beginning. So that's how my mom knew I had a gift, but she didn't want to nurture that gift. She wanted me to not know it. She wanted me to forget about it. She didn't want me to have to experience those things. But as time went on, we were living in a very old farmhouse. We moved in there when I was probably about 4 or 5. It's before I started kindergarten. And the place had lots of spirits. I think this house was built in the 1800s, probably had a lot of death associated with it. It was a house in the middle of cornfields, so it was really very rural, very by itself. And I do believe that that's why it was so spiritually active. I also was a child that collected dolls, which at the time we didn't realize that dolls can be vessels for souls. So I had, at one point, my mom counted my dolls, and I had over 400 dolls. So, and they were everything from little tiny dolls all the way to big walking dolls that looked like 3-year-olds. So I had lots of dolls. Everybody gave me dolls for my birthday, for Christmas, you name it, I got dolls. So I think that had a lot to do with it too, and I'm sure a lot of those dolls were probably haunted. A lot of people gave me old dolls, so there was antique dolls in there. I had dolls that had teeth. It was really strange, but I had lots of dolls. So when I think back on it, I think that we kind of attracted the spirits into the house, even with the dolls too. But when I was about 8 or 9, I was really afraid. My mom would make me sleep upstairs in this old farmhouse, and one day or one night she forced me to go upstairs into my room to sleep, and she was sewing in the room where the doorway to the upstairs went. So in the old farmhouses, you have a door that closes the stairwell. Well, she heard me, she thought, running down the stairs. The door flew open, hit the wall. The rocking chair started going. The rocking chair stopped, and the door slammed shut. Now, she didn't know that I had told the spirits to leave me alone, and if they didn't show her that they were real, that I wasn't going to listen to them or talk to them anymore. But I guess they did. But they didn't know because that she, you know, they knew that she didn't tell me. So because of that, I didn't know that she knew they were real. She wasn't acknowledging it. So they left me alone. I wasn't bombarded by them as much. I could say, go away, and they would do it. So that was really cool. So that's how it was when I was a little kid. Now, by the time I was about 12, we moved out of the farmhouse. We moved into trailer park. Now I'm from Indiana, so this is rural time in the 1960s and the early 70s. And so my mother finally told me that, and it was after my father had passed. He passed away when I was 13. After he passed away, she finally told me about that night, that experience with the spirits. And I'm like, that's why they left me alone. So she finally acknowledged that, yes, I could see them, could hear them, could, talk to them. Now, when I was about 15, after my father had passed away, when I was 15, I started reading tarot cards because my friends wanted me to go get a tarot reading from a lady in a town over from us. And at first I thought, I see and talk to the dead. Why do I need a tarot reading? And then it just hit me one day. I'm like, I need to go and learn how to do this. If I can read tarot cards, those spirits that have been coming to me that can't communicate enough to me, maybe if I read cards, they can speak through the cards. They can show me things. I can use these cards as a communication tool, which is really what they are. And so I started reading tarot for the dead, and I practiced and learned and studied tarot for about 14 years before I started reading for the living. So I had a lot of experience learning the tarot. I didn't feel I had enough life experience to be reading for other people. But by the time I was about 29, 30 years old, that's after I had 4 kids and was ready, then I could do that for others. But it took me a while to be able to get to that point. So that's when I started reading tarot. So now I'm in my 42nd year of reading tarot cards. Yes, I am 57 years old. I just turned 57 this year. And I don't feel old. I'm very happy to be a crone. I've got a lot more wisdom and a lot more attitude where I don't really care what other people think anymore, which is a good thing to have in some situations. So that's how I started. In 1996, I started on my metaphysical spiritual path. I was curious. I wanted to learn more, and a professor sent me on a mission. He wanted me to write a paper for my pop culture class at Purdue about the witchcraft versus metaphysics. And I had no idea about witchcraft. I had no idea about the witches. And metaphysics I understood a little bit, and I wasn't afraid of that part. but I had no idea how I was supposed to find out about witches and Wicca and all of that. Of course, all I knew about was Hollywood and how witches are portrayed. And well, I've learned my lesson now. I am a witch, and that just means wise one. And it's not a bad thing. It's just what Hollywood has done to us. But he sent me on this mission to go to a metaphysical store and find out about witchcraft. So I went there and took the biggest guy I knew with me. Yep. And we walked into that doorway and we just kind of went, oh, this is beautiful. And the smells are amazing. And ooh, look at the shiny rocks. And so that's kind of how it all started. I met the owner of the store. She gave me lots of books. I stayed there pretty much the entire night until it closed. Came back, did a drumming circle that night, did a healing circle the next day. I just spent my entire weekend there. And that was the beginning of my journey. How did I start to find my gifts? Well, it was through one of those gatherings at that store that someone that I had never met before came up to me and they said to me, "You're a walk-in." And I went, like, new to the store, because I had no clue what that meant. And they went, "Have you ever had a near-death experience?" And I'm like, well, yes, I have. When I was like between 2 and 3 years old. And they went, "Yep, we knew it. We could see it." And I'm like, okay. Now, growing up, I never could accept the name that my mother gave me. Every time I would look in the mirror, I just knew that's not who I was. That's not my name. And I don't know if any of you have ever felt that, but it's like just going, that name does not fit me. It's like not my spirit name. It's not who I am. And it took me a lot to realize why I was feeling that way. And then when I talked to this lady, she's like, "You're a walk-in," and started to explain it. See, what a walk-in is when a spirit that is not strong enough to heal a body that they are originally in, they make a deal with a stronger spirit that can heal that body and can come in, and then they just do an exchange. So basically, the spirit you see here now is Willow. This is who I've really been since I was about 2.5, 3 years old. And that's why the name never fit. But the spirit that I am now is more of a healer spirit, and that's why my spirit came in to heal this body that was dying. So that's the beginning of how I started on my journey. A little bit about who I am. Now, over the years, I've learned a lot more things. I have studied with an exorcist and learned how to do exorcisms, clearings, to take negative attachments off of people. I've done that. I do clearings on homes as well. The other thing that I've experienced, because you want to know some surreal things, well, I think that negative spirits, demonic spirits, if you want to call them that, I call them elementals. They've just never been human, and they can be very nasty. I think they learn about our fears, and some of our fears stem from Hollywood. So, excuse me. So, one of some of the experiences I've had is during my clearing work, and I have had a female client speaking in a male's voice, very scary male voice. It was not her. She was not really present in the room. This other thing that was attached to her was. And I exercised that one. I've had other experiences with clearing work where I've had someone on my massage table, my Reiki table, and I was doing a clearing on them and doing Reiki on them. They had an attachment since they were a child. And sure enough, I got out the frankincense and the dragon's blood, and I got out my spirit water, my spirit be gone spray, and started trying to see what this thing looked like, because that's the one thing this person could never see it. They knew it was there, but it would hide itself. This person grew up next to a cemetery, and then they got married and moved to the other side of the cemetery, but they were still next to the cemetery. So this thing came from that area of the dead. But when I brought out the spray, I had a friend living with me, and she was in another room next to the healings reading room that I'm in now, where I was doing the clearing. And when I brought out the spray, we all smelt the sulfur as this thing left. That was like really crazy, surreal. I mean, I've seen them go, but to have 3 people in the same room with me smell it too, that was pretty crazy. So that was pretty surreal. And it left. And then I made sure I cleared my entire house. It's gone. And it looked, from what I saw, it wore a black hooded cloak, and it looked kind of like a little troll, a little golem. It was just an ugly little creature. It was more of an oppressive spirit. It would try to tell you to do things that were bad or wrong. So it played on this person's emotions, and it was wonderful when we got it out, and it's gone, and it just, the energy shifted. That's been an experience. Some of the other things that I have learned about, that I had gifts that I didn't know that I had until I moved to New Orleans. One of the things that I found out about was that I can do psychometry, which is holding an object and seeing visions of where it's been, who owned it, attachments and things like that. The first item that I held, where I figured out that I had this gift that I didn't know I had, I thought I was going to be holding a replica canteen from the Civil War. Just, reenactment stuff. When I held the canteen, I was handed the canteen, and it wasn't fake. It was an antique canteen, and it took me back to a battleground. And I transported and saw all these visions of the soldiers dropping next to me and the smell of gunpowder. And I immediately handed it back to the person. I said, "You told me that was a replica." And they said, "No, I just wanted to see what you got from it." And I'm like, I don't ever want to touch it again. So that was the first time I had experienced psychometry. Now, since then, people have been sent to me with objects. So I do psychometry now, and that can be kind of interesting, kind of fun. I do enjoy that. Other experiences, I've seen full body apparitions. I've seen them out in Jackson Square and talked to them, thought they were another tarot reader, and they weren't. I acknowledged them, said good evening to them, and when I walked over to a garbage can and I stopped in my tracks and I went, wait a minute. There were no candles on that table. It was glowing like there were candles. Wait a minute. There were no legs on that table. There were no legs on that person, but she was solid from here up. And a beautiful woman, and I realized who she was later on down the road. After doing my research, I saw her in 2012. That's that apparition. In 2017, I was doing some research for a tour company that I owned, and I wanted to do a witchcraft and voodoo tour. And I was going through some research and found this person, this apparition, a picture of her from when she was alive. And she was one very important lady here in New Orleans, and her name was Mary Oneida Tubes. She owned one of the very first Wiccan churches here in the early 1970s. And so I was like, that was surreal. It's like, now I know who I was talking to or acknowledging. And that was really, I thought, a blessing that she would come and show herself to me in Jackson Square. So that's just another one of the surreal things. How do I develop my gifts? That was the question. Well, through the experiences. I always say, if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you have psychic gifts, use them. You don't know how to use them. Well, guess what? I didn't know how to use what I had. I just went with it. You go with the flow. If you have vivid dreams, keep a dream journal. That is important because I've had prophetic dreams. I saw my father's death before he died. 5 weeks actually before he passed, I saw him die. And he died from cancer, but we didn't know he had anything. He was going in for a hernia operation, and I had a horrible nightmare where my father was being chased through the woods by something we couldn't see. He tripped over a log and it caught him and it killed him. And I woke up knowing that something unseen was going to kill my father. And I told my mother, and she was very angry with me for even saying such a thing. But sure enough, he went in for a hernia operation like within a couple of days, and 5 weeks later he was dead. Because when they opened him up, they found that it wasn't just a hernia, but that it was Hodgkin's disease, and it was very aggressive. He was already stage 4 and had been for a while, and nobody knew. And so that I had to live with. I wished I'd had the dream sooner. So if you have prophetic dreams, write them down. Keep a journal, because you never know what you might see. It might take a couple of dreams to get the point across to you. The other thing, if you see spirits, don't fear them. Figure out why they're there. Ask them. Don't be afraid. Yeah, they're going to talk to you. I had to face that. If I ask them a question, what if they answer me? Well, I realized I needed them to answer me, and they did. It's not that scary. They're just people. If you're going to deal with something that's negative, then get somebody that's experienced and have them clear a space. Or if you feel like you have an attachment, get it cleared from you. It's not as frightening if you face it. When we are afraid of something, it's because we do not know about it. We haven't studied it. We fear the unknown. So if you're fearing something, it's because you don't know about it. So study about it. If you want to know more about spirits, read on spirits. If you want to know about walk-ins, read on those. If you want to know about psychometry, read on it. If you want to know how to channel, read it. Read upon those things. That's how I've developed my gifts, just by using them. And you can do that too. Just don't fear what you have. Yeah, when you're little, when I was like, a little kid, spirits would scare me. But when I realized I could tell them to leave me alone, and you can, because they don't belong in this realm, we do. We're not in their realm, they're in ours. You can tell them to leave you alone. That's very important. Just knowing that you have that control will help you get past the fear. So do that. Embrace what your gifts are. If you have questions, I'll gladly answer questions about different gifts. You can send a private message to me through my email. That's willowlamashon@yahoo.com. I would gladly answer you about gifts and how to work with them, especially if you're afraid of something. If you feel like you have an attachment, let's seek out a way to get you in touch with somebody that can help clear it from you. But that's how I've established who I am. That's how I have developed my gifts. Hopefully by explaining these things to you, you can develop yours. And if you have any other questions, just open up to me. I would love to answer more questions. Send them to me. Now's your opportunity. I hope I don't bore you with my stories. but this is who I am. I've been who I am since I was very little. Study up on some stuff, guys. Read those books. Do your research. It's going to help you grow. It's going to help you develop your skills. It's going to help you no longer be afraid of your gifts. And that's also important. Don't fear what you have. It's a gift. And if we fear them, we don't use them. And they are a gift, so we're supposed to use them. So I hope that answered your questions today. If you would like a private reading, I am available for in-person here in New Orleans. Also FaceTime or on phone. I can do those too. Just contact me through my website. You'll find my text number there. You can also email me. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. All those links are going to be down below in the description of this video. And until next time, be blessed.